This is the DAR Today podcast, and I'm your host, Brooke Bullmaster Stewart. Well, as you know, we've been keeping to certain themes for each month, and in this lovely month of February, our theme is genealogy, including record keeping, researching, how our DAR applications are handled, all of it. It's a huge and amazing part of the Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, so we would be remiss if we didn't talk about all of it on this podcast. There's a fantastic resource available to all of us as DAR members. It's a newsletter called Genealogy Gems, published by the DAR Genealogy Commission, chaired by Jeannine Dobbins. What a treasure she is to our society. We'll play a segment today called The Path of a Paper, which was written by her. This story takes us on the journey of a new member application with all of its drama. Do you ever try to do your own genealogy research? It can be a real challenge. For instance, have you ever looked on a census record knowing that a certain ancestor should be there and yet they're not? Well, according to an enlightening article written by Lee Lloyd, a national vice chair for lineage research, she recently talked about Census Day and how the presence of a person, or the lack of it, needs a second glance. There's an official day in a census year called the Census Day, and it's often misunderstood. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, information given to the census taker was to be correct as of a specific day, and it was used to determine who was counted and where. That was not always the same day as the census was taken, the day when the person called the enumerator came to the house to get the information. Now, this is a big deal. Imagine your ancestor was born on, let's say, June 2nd of a census year, but the enumerator came by in August asking, who was living in this house on June 1st? Well, any child born after the census day were to be omitted, as they were not there in the house on the census day, in this case June 1st, even though they might be there in front of the enumerator crying their blessed lungs out. They cannot be counted as being in that house on that particular year of the census. So, at first glance at the census, it might look like your ancestor was not part of this family, but look again at those dates. It could help you with your search. There's so much to learn about our intriguing and sometimes elusive ancestors, but they're there. Well, regarding records of our ancestors, I don't know if you remember, on this podcast we talked about the need for volunteers to help transcribe the records found in the office of the Historian General. Well, that project has been completed, and we want to tell you all about it in today's podcast. But first, we ask that you subscribe to this podcast, hitting that notification bell so that you're alerted about upcoming episodes. And as always, hey, thanks so much for being here with us today. After a 2-year multi-phase project, the DAR is thrilled to announce the DAR Marker and Grave Location Index. This accomplishment was made possible by the dedicated efforts of the Office of the Historian General Staff, the DAR Genealogy Preservation Committee, indexing volunteers, the NSDAR Technology Planning Commission, the Department of Information Systems, and Versivo Incorporated. Now, the information previously contained in marker card catalogs is accessible and searchable in a new online index, a link to which we'll leave in the show notes. The DAR Marker and Grave Location Index is available through the GRS, or Genealogical Research System, on both the DAR public and member websites. Specifically, the index can be found within the overall Revolutionary War Records section of the GRS. The collection contains the following information spanning from the DAR's earliest history in the 1890s up to about circa 2005. It includes historical and commemorative markers, Revolutionary War soldier and patriot grave locations, and Revolutionary War soldier and patriot grave markers. It also includes marked graves of real daughters, wives and daughters of Revolutionary War soldiers and patriots. Now, here's an important note. The majority of the information in this database was reported prior to the implementation of the current DAR Revolutionary War Grave Marker application process, which came about circa 1990. Not all Revolutionary War patriots indexed in this database are established yet as DAR ancestors. So what does that tell you? Well, if you see an ancestor of yours on this index, but do not yet see them confirmed as a DAR Patriot's ancestor, here's your sign to fill out a supplemental application to establish a new recognized patriot within DAR. Now, there's a user guide available for the DAR marker and grave location index, and we'll also add a link to that in the show notes. For any questions, please contact the Historian General's office at historian@dar.org. Hi, my name is NewMemberApplication for my mom, Jane Sparkle, and you can call me Anna Mae for short. I want to tell you what has happened to me since my mom's chapter registrar put me into an envelope and mailed me off to 1776 D Street Northwest in Washington, D.C. I don't remember much of the trip until I actually arrived at the big post office in the District of Columbia. I was tossed into a large pile of other envelopes, all addressed to 1776 D Street Northwest. We stayed in that pile until we were picked up at the post office by a very nice man who works at the mailroom at DAR headquarters. He took us all back to the building where we were sorted and sent to the correct office. In my case, that was data entry. Apparently, DAR has an agreement with the post office to pick up the mail rather than having it delivered to the building. Isn't that nice? Well, when I got to data entry, my envelope was gently opened and I was pulled out. I could see again. It felt wonderful, but I digress. I was unfolded and placed into my own personal file folder. I felt very safe. Various things were checked, like a preliminary physical exam to make sure all my parts were there. They checked for correct signatures and confirmation that the fee check accompanying me was from the chapter and in the correct amount. Now, if I had been a supplemental, the check would, of course, been from the member submitting the supplemental. Well, next, the very nice lady in data entry entered my information into a software system called IMIS, which reminds me of a song by Neil Diamond, but I digress yet again. This is my profile. My name, birthday, and other details were input to create my member profile. Well, then, a more thorough examination was conducted, covering specific points, making sure there weren't any obvious errors that would automatically cause an AIR, or additional information required. This step saves some time for the staff genealogist who will thoroughly examine me later. If I had any issues with these points, like missing dates or places or no residence or service for my patriot, I would be held up where my mom would be notified of these issues and asked to correct them. Well, until they're corrected, I stay firmly planted in data entry. If I were a supplemental paper and had issues, I would be placed back into the envelope along with the member's check and sent back that long way home to fix the problems before I was sent back in. Well, since I didn't have any issues, because of course the chapter registrar read the DAR genealogy guidelines, well, I was scanned into another software system called OnBase. All the documents that came with me, including the check, were also scanned into OnBase. Well, my member profile from IMIS transferred my information onto OnBase as well. Well, then my file was transferred to the genealogy department. Since I'm a new member application, I went to the section that handles that very thing, new member applications. If I were a supplemental paper, I would have gone to the section of staff that reviews supplemental papers. Each area has its own filing cabinets. That makes sense. Are you with me so far? I was placed in the filing cabinet for papers that have not yet been reviewed. We're filed by the first letter of our last name chronologically. Since my last name is Sparkle, I went into the S drawer with my processing date entered on the tab of my file. When I was entered into OnBase, I was also assigned a certain Q. There are many different queues, and the queue you are assigned to is determined by your personal characteristics. Some of the different queues include new patriot, different child of an established patriot, established child of an established patriot, papers with an analysis, Spanish or French patriot papers, and several others. I am a new patriot paper, so I was assigned to that queue. The queue system is necessary because different categories of papers vary in difficulty, and not all staff have the experience and expertise to review the more challenging papers. Since I'm for a new patriot, only staff members qualified to review those can review me. This means that papers received the same day as I was, but for established patriots, will be reviewed before me because they're easier and more staff members are available to review them. Now, when a qualified staff member is ready to start reviewing a new paper, they'll go into the on-base database and pull up the first paper in that queue. They retrieve the physical copy of the paper from the filing cabinet, that's me hauled on up out of there, and claim the paper on on-base. Imagine that, I've been claimed. So that allows the next paper in the New Patriot queue to come up in line for review. I won't go into detail on the review process, but suffice it to say that all the documents sent in with me were analyzed. I had check marks placed on my second, third, and fourth pages, which tickled, and all kinds of notes were made by the staff genealogist. Everything checked out successfully, so the reviewer marked me as ready for review by a checker. All papers are reviewed a second time before they're finally approved. Now, once I passed my second review, my file was sent back to data entry where I was assigned my national number. I was approved by those wonderful ladies in the National Board of Management via their electronic vote, and then my new member packet, along with the membership certificate, was mailed to my mom, Jane Sparkle. The documentation that came with me was sorted so that any vital records less than 100 years old were destroyed. Documents available online or not needed were recycled, and any other documents were scanned and attached to me as supporting documentation. The procedure is complicated with many steps along the way. It is also time-consuming. It's been determined that the $75 fee collected covers about half of the actual cost in staff time to complete the procedure. I am an expensive document. Now, once I've been given my national number, I am stored for posterity. I can take a well-deserved rest. I have done my job. But for Jane Sparkle, her exciting journey has now begun as she is now a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution. We leave you today with this quote by Jeremy Hardy. The thing that interests me most about family history is the gap between the things we think we know about our families and the realities. Well, thanks for listening and be well, dear friends. Let's celebrate the stars and stripes forever and remember, with all of your ancestors behind you, you are the result of the love of thousands. Well, this podcast was written and produced by our incredible team of writers and editors, and we are, as always, so grateful for President General Pamela Edwards Rouse Wright and Historian General Suzanne Heskey for their constant guidance, and to Lee Lloyd and Jeannine Dobbins for being so generous with their time. The National Society Daughters of the American Revolution is a nonprofit, non-political, volunteer women's service organization dedicated to preserving our American history, securing the nation's future through better education, and promoting American patriotism. Members are all lineal descendants of those who supported the cause of independence in the Revolutionary War. For more information, please visit dar.org. This is the DAR Today podcast.